Hi, welcome aboard. We've got a very interesting segment for you today. I'm sure everybody remembers from watching the America's Cup reports that not only did we know what Ben Lexon had for breakfast almost every day during the work up to the challenge, but we're also well aware of the fact that he had to take a model of Australia to Holland to test it in a test tank there. Now, test tanks aren't very common around the world, but they're essential if you're looking to optimise the design of any boat. They have some serious disadvantages, among them being the fact that you're testing under fairly constrained and controlled circumstances. You have to do a run down the tank at one speed, then you have to wait for the tank to settle down, then do a run back at a different speed, different loadings and all that sort of thing. And also, most importantly, because there aren't very many, there's not much security, so there's a lot of industrial espionage goes on surrounding the various test tank environments around the world, and some designers have been mortified to find that their brand new revolutionary design has been world knowledge before they've even had a chance to test it or, of course, to exploit it. So ASD Marine Services on the Gold Coast in Australia have been involved in the design of some quite revolutionary tunnel catamaran displacement hulls for quite a while. In fact, some of you will remember that we featured them about 5 years ago on World of Boats. And because their designs are revolutionary and because they break entirely new ground in optimising the performance of boats up to well over 100 feet long, it's been necessary, in fact essential, for ASD to have access to regular test tank facilities. Now, it's very expensive and difficult to travel to Holland. As I mentioned before, you have security problems when you're testing in commonly used test tanks. So ASD sat down, looked at the problem, and they've come up with a solution which not only overcomes all of the problems that I've mentioned, but also looks set to revolutionise hull testing all around the world. It's attracted tremendous interest from the Department of Defence in Australia. It's attracted interest from yacht designers and ship and boat designers from all around the world. And it is elegant in its simplicity, but really comes up with all of the answers to all of the problems, with a couple of added advantages as well. Now, as you can see, I'm driving quite an unusual device. It's an aluminium catamaran powered by two Mercury thrusters. This is half of the Mercury thruster. The drive halves are down there. This actually just controls the speed of the motors, and of course the steering wheel operates them through a little steering linkage down the back there. They're capable of driving the catamaran at around about 4.5 knots. Now, the rig in its present form will test a wide range of hull sizes and types, both planing and displacement, at speeds from 0 up to 40 knots. As you can see, there's a lot of new ground being broken. The requirements for data are enormous. As they build new hulls, their database is expanded. They're able to look at further refinements, and they need to test on a regular basis. Now, we're going to show you how it works. I promise you, it's absolutely fascinating. ASD have offices in Greece and in Australia, and Alec Duffy, who works between the two countries, is in the process of installing a load cell. Now, as you can see, this is mounted in bearings so that the hull can ride up and down on whatever waves are either desired or are present. And the sensor in the very end of it is able to sense all of the various loads and their vectors that are being applied to the test model, and that's then recorded on a computer tape, which of course ultimately is taken inside and is loaded into a computer, which returns all of the data and records it and correlates it. Alec, what sort of data does the probe transmit to the computer for us?
The prime data is the resistance of the hull. Secondary data is that you can record the flow of the hull and also the wave heights prior and post to testing.
Right.
But in essence, what you end up with is a record of the resistance against various speeds.
So that tells you, you can scale that up and relate it to the full-size boat. It tells you how much power you're going to need to drive that hull at a given speed at a given weight.
Exactly that. You determine from that data, you determine the horsepower that you need to go at a certain speed.
Right.
Exactly that.
Okay. And what else does it tell us? Does it tell you anything about the hydrodynamics of the hull? Is it possible for you to look at that data, observe the boat by eye or by camera while it's operating, and maybe come up with projected differences in hull contours, etc.?
You can do various tests of the hull and vary, for instance, especially in catamarans, you can vary the angle of the hulls and vary the distances apart of the hulls and get various different types of resistance calculations. You can also see, you can video record the waves passing past the hull, so you can see the type of performance through the seaway.
And of course, one of the factors in tank testing or in any sort of model testing is scale effect, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
How do you overcome that? How do you account for that?
Well, you will always have error when you're scaling.
Right.
You will always have that. There are standard techniques of trying to compensate for scaling effect. But one of the good things about this is that you can actually have quite large models here.
Yes.
And the larger the model, in essence, you can make it more precise.
Of course. One of the great advantages of this is the fact that, as you say, you can have models which are a far greater proportion of the size of the finished boat than you can get in even the largest of the tanks.
It depends on the size of the tanks, because there are some large tanks going about, but the problems with the large tanks usually is that you can't get a good run for that size of model.
Right.
Whereas here, if you have
got the largest test tank in the world.
That's it.
And of course the other nice thing about it is that in transit, while you're actually operating it, you can be altering the fore and aft trim, you can be altering the waterline level of the tank model, all in the one run.
Oh yeah, you could be doing various things.
The implications of the model test platform as designed by ASD are really quite enormous. For starters, it's the only boat of its type in the world. Not only is it locally designed, it's a catamaran, it's powered by 2 electric motors, but it has the ability to give ASD, and of course other marine architects around the world who wish to purchase one, data which up until now has simply not been available, and data which relates much more directly to the actual environment in which the finished ship is going to live. Obviously, it's early days. As time goes by, ways will be found of feeding more and more data from that model into the computer, data which relates to things such as lateral stability, the performance of the hull in various scale wave heights. Sensors can be put on the platform and on the model itself to measure almost any and every aspect of the performance of the finished hull. I've said before on World of Boats, I have tremendous respect for Aussie ingenuity. What you've seen here today is Aussie ingenuity at work, showing the way to the rest of the world. We'll be back right after this break. Well, Neville, you've pulled us into the classroom today, no out on the water, and you're determined to show us what a river looks like from a bird's eye view. By the way, that tree's laying completely on its side.
Look, out on a boat you get pretty pictures, but you can't point out just exactly the areas that you must fish in to produce fish.
Right.
Now what I've done is, you'll notice, I've drawn a river with a couple of bends in it, and I'm going to explain just where the fishes will be expected to be in that river. Now, let's take an in tide. We've got the tide running in this way, and it comes in, immediately it strikes the corner of the river, it speeds up in this area here and slows down in this area here. Right. The result being that the banks are all eroded on this outer side here.
Now that's the banks you see just sort of curling over and falling in.
And I've drawn the grass. I'm a real Rembrandt.
Yeah, I know.
I've drawn the grass there, which will fall into the river.
Right.
Now this is a good feed for fishes to pick around, etc. Now, another thing that would happen is that this part of the river would get very deep around there, whereas this would actually build up or keep building up into a sandbank. Result being that in this area, we would expect to catch the brims, we'd expect to catch the trevallies, we'd expect to catch the mangrove jacks.
Right.
Over on this side, where we have the sand spit, we would expect, as the water comes in here, we would expect it to churn the sand up on this area here and drop the feed into there. Right. So that's where you'll find the whiting. the whiting will be feeding in this area here.
So effectively behind the sandbank as far as the tidal direction is concerned.
Now immediately the tide is reversed and it starts running out and it starts running this way, what will happen is exactly the same thing over here in reverse.
Right.
But here, yes, and it does the same thing there in reverse, really. But it drops the feed over here, and this is where you'd be fishing over here on the up tide.
Okay, fine.
Got me?
Yeah.
Now, as we go upriver, we go, and won't take any notice of that for a moment. We come across an area which is exactly the same as this one, only we have a timbered area here.
Right.
Now, that would mean you'd get the logs in that falling into the river.
We've seen those over on South Stradbroke,
yes,
haven't
that's
we?
right, yes. And you get it more so in a river because this bank from here to here has become eroded.
Right.
And the timbers have actually fallen into the river. And this is where you'd pick up even down to the cod and this kind of fish that inhabit the river there. And of course over here we have exactly the same thing as what we have up on the other corner.
The sandbank.
But you might say, yeah, but I've caught fish on the in the river and it's been straight there.
Yeah.
Now why is that? Well, I don't know, but I would suggest that on that straight of the river, as in along there would be a sunken reef. It could be timbers that have fallen into the river or logs at one stage that have been overgrown with moss and all this sort of thing.
In the case of most of our coastal rivers, it could be old car bodies and stuff like that.
Feed and protection is what they're looking for. Right. It could be that there's a bit of a reef in there, some rocks in there, which will also give them protection. And another thing what it does, as the water's running in this area here, so it picks up speed again as it comes up, kind of levels the speed out.
Right.
And it gets in here and it digs holes. Now, say that rock was to be shaped like that. It would then get a big hole in here, right?
Right.
Therefore, the dew would lay in there.
Right.
Wherever you get a deep hole, you get the bigger fishes like the dew and that sort of thing, all laying in behind the rocks.
Right.
I'm lost.
All right. All right. Well, while you collect your wits, a couple of things arise out of that. A couple of questions I have. Firstly, if that bank falls in and this builds up a sandbar, it's reasonable to assume that the river is slowly moving, isn't it? Okay, that bend is moving down in this direction.
Oh, yes,
over a lengthy period of time.
Of course. That's what caused the bend in the first place.
Right, okay, because the river is moving.
Yes.
So the rivers change their course all the time.
Yes.
And the other aspect of it is, and one that's far more relevant, we mentioned that as the current comes in, it digs out the outside of the curves and makes the river deeper in those areas.
Right.
Now, I see guys running up rivers and cutting the corners.
Right. That's where they come unstuck.
Exactly. That's where they end up on the high and dry. So it's a hard and fast rule without any exceptions that I know of, unless, of course, there's a sunken reef or something, that the outside of the curve is the deeper side of the river. And when you get to the straight, you effectively run in a diagonal across the straight.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Exactly the opposite to a racing driver around a circuit.
That's right, yeah, sure. Yeah, where he cuts the corners. Chris, you spoke of boats running up the river. Now, when you're trolling for, say, trevally and that, and in areas like this, it's great trevally country because of this falling in of the...
How close to the sea?
How close
You're
to
talking about trevally. How close to the sea would we be talking about in this area?
Trevally go for miles upon miles up the river.
Is that right?
Oh, yes. In this river here, the Nerang River, you'll find they go right to Nerang.
Is that right?
Which is a long way up the river.
Good.
Now, all this falling into these grasses and that there is good protection for the trevally. He hangs in under there, and as the schools go past, he comes up and goes, come here, you know.
Yeah, right.
Now, when you're trolling for them, what you do is you keep your boat right up close there so that your lure's running within so far of the bank. And you can do this because it's a bowl bank. It's been dug deep.
That's right, yeah.
With me?
Yeah.
So you then keep your boat right in close there, and therefore your lures will also hang in real close to the side as you come round these parts.
What are you talking about when you're talking about a gutter?
Well, I think this will explain it to you. You've got the southeasterlies, which are a common wind on our coastline here, coming in at this angle here, and you'll get the waves coming in also
on the same angle.
On the same angle from the southeast, right? Now they carve out these gutters. They cause the gutters to be formed. Now the way they're formed is that, as I was saying, you've got to walk back towards the sandhills, and that leaves an expanse of water right in front of you. If you was to keep walking straight ahead, you'd walk straight into the gutter.
Right.
Now, if you look at that point, straight out to sea, you'll see under the water a sandbank formed.
Where the waves are breaking.
Where the waves are breaking across it. Now, the waves coming in from the southeast will break across the bank in that area there and out here, but it will miss it there.
Right.
And
they won't break until they get
till
actually
it gets
into
into
there.
this shore here.
Right.
Now, what happens is that these waves coming across here cause white water across that bank, and this water here carries them across, so that you get white water coming in like that. That's what I'm trying to get.
Good
now,
representation of white water.
Yes,
too, by
right.
the way.
Okay. Now, this is deep water, shallowing as you come into your gutter until you get to this little neck here, where the water actually runs through here, is very, very shallow, probably ankle deep.
In some cases, it's actually locked off.
Then it's locked off sometimes.
So you can actually walk out.
As the tide goes out, so that gets blocked off, leaves this here, and this will come out of the water.
Right.
So you've actually got to walk. You've stolen me thunder here a little bit, because what you'll have to do then to fish out into the water here, you'd have to walk across that gutter and fish across that bank.
Right.
You don't do that on an in tide. That is taboo.
At all.
Okay,
Right.
you don't do that at all, because what happens on an in tide, that bank can absolutely collapse. And if it does, it'll leave you in the water with deep water here at your back. When the tide's coming in, this is getting deeper, this is still shallow here, then you think you're safe.
Yeah.
And you're not, because that's the deep water. But that's not what I'm here to tell you.
In northern latitudes, the tide comes in very, very quickly too.
Yes, that's right. Yes,
So it can
My
catch
word,
you.
It can catch you. Now, back to the fishing part of it, we have here this water in here, where the water's coming through here and across the bank here and dropping feed once again into the deeper water here.
So what it's doing is stirring up the bank.
Stirring up the bank.
It's washing the sand in.
Yes.
And dropping the mixture of sand and feed into the deep water.
Right, into the deeper water. In this area here, you will catch the whiting.
Right.
And a little bit deeper, you will catch the flathead, because the flathead are laying back here and wait for the whiting. Right?
Okay.
Then we have the bank along here, which the water is coming across the bank here and dropping your feed right along there.
Right.
Now that's where you'll get your bream. You notice the different kind of fishes as you're coming out into the gutter?
And the gutter is shelving down.
Yes,
it's getting
deeper
as you go.
and deeper as we go, until such times as we get into this area here, where this white water's coming across here, and you'll get tailor in the white water. You'll also get skippies, as we call them, dart, in this area. And out here, where it is very deep, because this water is swilling through the gutter. That's why you've got to be so careful when you're swimming for gutters. The water is ripping through here and whooshing around in a corner and digging that real deep. Now, the fish that's laying in there in weight is the Jew.
Right.
This is what they call the food chain. Then, outside of the gutter in this area here, you get your sharks and your tuna out there to sea, waiting for anything that might come out of the gutter that says, come here.
Yeah, right.
You got it?
Yeah.
But that is the way a gutter is formed, and that's the fish where you catch them in the gutter.
Well, you're right. We've shot this over the 8 years probably 3 or 4 times, trying to show as graphically as we can on film.
Yes.
A gutter. But this has shown it to us.
Yes. It is
Far
very
more
difficult
graphically than the film could. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, what's the scale, Neville? If you're standing there, how far can you expect to cast out?
Well, because it's different distances because of the size of the gutter, etc. But normally, if you're fishing about there, you would reach that part of the gutter without any problem at all. Yes.
Right.
If you're fishing down in this area here, you'd get out into that white water, which is what you want anyhow.
Okay. Now, you just brought a question of mine when you said gutters are different sizes. Do you look for a specific size of gutter?
Not really. You look for a nice deep gutter in close that you can fish in. Now, you get high tide and low tide gutters. That means that in a low tide, that would empty out completely and would just leave a hollow in the sand.
Right.
And you would go into a low tide gutter, which would be out to sea further. Would be a similar shape.
Yeah.
Or it could have
further
another
out.
sandbank in here, coming in here, making a real hole in it.
Yeah, right. we're just sneaking up on episode 400 of World Debates. Another 3 or 4 weeks and we'll be at our 8th year, moving into our 9th year. And just sitting here at Nicolini's on the pier at Mariner's Cove on the Gold Coast has caused me to reflect on the last 8 years of World Debates and think about the changes that have taken place, not only in the boating scene, but also in the facilities that have been offered for the boating man. And they're absolutely incredible. The last 8 years has probably been a period of the greatest growth in boating and in the boating industry in probably the last 15 or 20 years in Australia. For instance, when we first started, we took an office at Spit Marina, which was just back on the shore there. Absolutely none of this existed. It was all completely open water. We had a little office there, and I used to look out across the Broadwater here with an unimpeded view of Southport on the other side, never dreaming that not only would this huge marina be built one day, but also a complete restaurant and shop complex built on Mariner's Pier. Now, that's not the only development. It's one of many developments that have taken place on the Gold Coast and in other places up and down the coast, all of them aimed at the boating man. And it just goes to show that business, the general community, the governments, state governments and federal governments really do see boating as a significant leisure activity. But leisure isn't the only way in which people go boating. Obviously, we've seen a lot of commercial boats, a lot of power unit developments for fishing and for various other commercial purposes. So make sure you continue to watch World Debates. In months to come, we'll be lifting the production values, we'll be turning the show, giving the show an awful lot more sparkle, and generally making it look a lot better. That wraps us for another week. We'll see you next week with another World Debates. In the meantime, take care and safe boating.